This is Twit.
Well, a federal court jury reached a verdict in the Apple-Samsung patent lawsuit that we've been telling you about for the past couple of months. The outcome was a mixed bag for both companies. The jury ordered Samsung to pay Apple $119.6 million in damages, million with an M. They wanted $2.2 billion with a B. And they ordered Apple to pay Samsung about $158,000. You know, who knows how much they wanted. And with us to explain this outcome, which I suspect nobody is happy with, is Ian Sherr, who's a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you.
And also Chris O'Brien, who's a reporter for the Los Angeles Times. Welcome, Chris.
Great to be here.
All right, so Chris O'Brien, I'll start with you because you're on the screen. Who won this case? I can't really tell.
Well, there's no clear-cut winner, although I would say it's a split verdict that probably leans heavily to Samsung for the reason you sort of referenced. I mean, Apple was seeking $2.2 billion with a B in damages, and they got $119 million with an M. So, you know, the jury split down the 4 patents that were on trial, said Samsung violated 2 of them, but it sort of, in a sense, said, well, it's really not such a big deal as Apple's making out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ian Sherr, I have the feeling that Apple pursues these lawsuits against Samsung because it wants to make a big impact on the rest of the industry and on Samsung and on the public, which is that Apple invented many of the conventions that smartphone uses, that many of the things that Samsung and other companies have been using in their Android phones are copies or rip-offs of Apple products. That's a controversial point. Some people think that they are more or less right about that. Other people think they're full of hooey, and still other people think that maybe they did invent some of these things, but they should just be generally used conventions. And of course, bringing up the rear is the problem of patents in general and patent trolling and the whole patent mess in the United States. So this seems to me like you know, I would agree that this is essentially a defeat for Apple. I don't know if it's a victory or defeat for Samsung, but it's a clear defeat for Apple because they didn't make the point they wanted to make, did they?
Well, it's kind of debatable. Apple obviously in their statement feels that they had some sort of a win, but definitely, I mean, the thing you have to think about is that all of this is symbolic, right? Even $2 billion is chump change for these companies. And so what's really going on here is that Apple is trying to, as you pointed out, really make a statement, hey, we invented this stuff and we deserve to be compensated because this is our technology. And so far, as you've noted, they've had a mixed bag in the courts. They've been able to win on some things and not others. Samsung has become the primary people that they're suing, primarily because Samsung is the largest Android maker at this point, and they are the biggest competitor for Apple. It's interesting, actually, the two patents that the jury said that Samsung had violated or infringed were 2 of the kind of dramatic ones that you could think of. Slide to unlock, for example. I don't know if you remember, but when the iPhone first came out, one of the things that a lot of people were really interested in was the fact that you just slid your thumb across the screen. Now we all do it every day. So that's one of the patents that ended up winning. The other one was data tapping, which is like if you tap on a little phone number and suddenly you get all this information. And then the judge had actually earlier decided on a 5th patent for autocomplete, where you type in someone's name and you get it wrong, and it says, oh, by the way, it's actually this. That was another one that Apple, so far that patent seems to have stood up. So, you know, what Apple has now is they're able to say, look, this technology that we have, the courts have said that this is our patent and that it's valid. And one of the things that's interesting about all these patent battles is that the USPTO, the patent office, can issue a patent to a company, but when it survives in court, it has much more power. And so there are 2 patents that have gone away, but there are 3 patents that have survived a court kind of going through it. And now they're able to say, look, this is our technology. They're able to go to any Android handset maker that they haven't settled with already and say, this is a powerful patent now.
Now, Ian Sherr, this makes me think that the slide to unlock feature in Android and the autocomplete feature in Android needs to go away now. What happens now in terms of the user interface in Android?
Well, none of this stuff has to go away. So what's likely gonna happen eventually is a settlement. And it's just we're counting down the clock until that happens. And really what you're seeing in all of these lawsuits is there is a lot of jockeying for power in the settlement room. So right now, Apple has either an upper hand or a lower hand, depending on how you look at it and the way that you see how powerful these patents are. And eventually you have all these lawyers stacking up what's the value of each patent on each side, and then saying, okay, well, this is worth this is worth that, and this is what you owe us in the end. But all of this is about settlement. And that means that a cross-license eventually for these patents, because let's be honest, the cat's already out of the bag. The potatoes are on the floor, whatever analogy you want to use. There's no way that they're going to be able to take these technologies out of Android phones. And at the end of the day, again, Apple feels as though that already this technology has been violated. So now they want some sort of compensation. They want to be recognized and financially somehow give recompense for all of this.
So, Chris O'Brien, what's next in this particular case for these particular patents? The court case is still not completed yet, is it?
That's correct. I mean, as we're talking here, they're back in the courtroom actually dickering over some of the some minor amounts of the verdict math that the jury came up with. The jury basically had a choice of going back and fixing it Friday night or going home for the weekend, and they chose to go home for the weekend, which is understandable. I would suspect both sides are gonna scrutinize it heavily. And I expect that Apple, the other potential win for them in all this is they get some sort of product ban or injunction to try to block some Samsung products in the market. And that, again, goes to the challenge of these types of things. I mean, I don't know if we've said this explicitly yet, but the products at issue in this case are 2, sometimes 3 years old. And so, when we're talking about what violated a patent and what they have to do to get around it and what could a product injunction mean, I mean, we're talking about things like the Galaxy S3 at a time when the company is focused on selling the Galaxy S5. And so, how much impact all this has practically on what Samsung has to do to comply with it is going to be unclear for a while, but I think it will be minimal. And of course, then you get into the issue of, appeals ad infinitum, probably from both sides.
Now, Selena Larson, somebody in the chat room named Jesse from Birmingham, Alabama, asked the question as to whether these patent cases hurt the brands. Is it bad for Apple's and Samsung's reputation, probably Apple's reputation more than Samsung's, that they're so litigious about patents and so aggressive about patents? Do you think this hurts them at all?
Ultimately, I don't think so. This doesn't really harm the consumer in any way. As they were saying, that the Samsung is the real winner here, right? So they paid a small nominal fee, which is really a drop in the bucket, and they still have a huge market share on mobile devices. So while Apple says they did get sort of a win, right, that said they were infringing on their patents. However, it's not going to stop consumers from purchasing Samsung phones. They're still growing in Android market share, and ultimately, consumers don't really care about court cases. They just want great phones.